Welcome back to TexsDIYTips. This video will show you how to convert under-seat storage in older caravans or pop-tops. You should note the total weight of the complete installation of both drawers was about 30 kilos. The problem. The issue is that whilst there are lovely big storage areas under the divan seating of most vans, in the older ones it is a bugger to access. Usually, you must remove the seat cushions and then lift the hinged seat base to access the storage, and this needs to be somehow accomplished with the table in situ, making it even more difficult. The solution. One end of our under-seat storage, adjacent to the doorway, had a small drop-down hatch. It occurred to me that if I remove that hatch, I could fit a pull-out storage drawer. It also occurred to me that I could make a similar opening at the end of the other seat and fit a second storage drawer under that seat. Upon removing the drop-down hatch, I discovered that I could enlarge the opening right out to the internal framing, making the opening far bigger than the actual hatch size. I set to work with a panel saw and various other tools to accomplish this task. Halfway through the job, remembering that I own a reciprocating saw. Anyway, I managed to get the opening cut back to the internal framing and sanded and tidied up the opening. I then made an identical opening at the end of the other seat which did not have a hatch in it. I measured up the length of the opening and purchased some heavy-duty drawer slides from the local Bunnings hardware store to suit. These were surprisingly heavy, by the way. I glued and screwed some lengths of 89 by 19 mm dressed pine to fit between the existing frame uprights supporting the seat, which gave me something to screw the sliding rails to. I also replaced the thin corner brace with the same material. The instructions said that the rails should be mounted below center, so I cut some short lengths of pine for the rails to sit on level at the correct height while I screwed them to the frame. The installation of the first pair of rails was very easy as there was virtually no variation in width between the two rails along their length. In the second set of rails, I needed to pack out one rail in order to have a consistent width between the two rails all the way along their length. I used a piece of timber cut to exact width in order to check this dimension on both sets of rails. The rails I selected allowed both drawers to come out as far as possible in the van. I then constructed the first drawer and did a test fit. I screwed the drawer to the rails with short wood screws which were just long enough to pierce the inside of the drawer timber to make a mark. I screwed the base on without adhesive for later removal. I made a template of one side of the drawer out of scrap timber to carry out a test fit to see if I could actually get the drawer into the opening once it was completed. It was necessary to cut a small scallop out of the ends of the sides of the drawer which was first entered into the opening in order to achieve the maximum possible width to enable me to insert the drawer. I also removed the pot drawer and another cupboard door directly opposite the opening. To screw the drawer to the rails at the correct height, I packed up the drawer up with some 5 mm packers. The drawer was then removed, and the screw holes were drilled out to the appropriate size, and furniture nuts were hammered into position from the inside until the heads were level with the face of the plywood. The joints of the sides were then glued and screwed permanently together, but the base was not glued to the sides at this time. At this point, I also realized that the fascias of both drawers would need to be removable as they were bigger than the actual drawer itself and would obstruct the fitting of the drawer if they were fitted permanently. I lined the sides of the box with 3 mm black fabric starting away from the corner and leaving about 80 mm of fabric hanging over the top. This really is a two-person job. A wallpaper trowel made the application much easier. Note the furniture nuts embedded flush in the plywood. Prior to applying the fabric, all edges were sanded smooth and slightly rounded so as not to catch or tear the fabric. Once I had finished applying the fabric to the interior of all sides, I masked off the outside of the box and sprayed contact adhesive on the top 100 mm of the box. It was then possible to stretch the excess fabric over the top of the box and stick it to the outside. It was very tight in the corners, but the thin fabric has exceptionally good give and can be stretched without tearing. I masked off the area of the base that would be eventually glued and screwed to the sides. I sprayed the base with contact adhesive, then removed the masking tape, and fitted the 3 mm lining fabric. I then screwed the base to the sides temporarily and ran a sharp blade around the inside of the box to trim the base fabric. You don't want any fabric under the timber glue joint. Then I finally permanently glued and screwed the base to the sides. I trimmed off the outside fabric level, then cleaned off any excess contact adhesive with thinners and painted the rest of the box matte black. The fascias were then made from 6mm plywood and temporarily screwed to the front of the box. I drilled 4 holes and fitted 4 furniture nuts to the outside of the fascia. I countersunk them slightly with a suitable speed bore. I did this so the furniture nuts did not obstruct the fitting of the laminate on the face. The fascias were then test fitted, the catch and push button was fitted and tested. The fascias were then removed for finishing. The inner surrounding edge of the fascia was lined with strips of the same material, giving a nice seal when the drawer is closed. This setup allows the fascias to be fitted after the boxes are installed in the van, by screwing them from the inside of the box front, leaving a clean fascia with no screw holes. I then purchased some grey laminate to cover the fascias, and finally painted the fascia edges matte black. I fitted the catch and handle from the old hatch to the new drawer. I purchased online a matching catch and painted a handle for the other drawer which did not originally have a hatch. The second drawer was exactly the same process except that it was necessary to create an opening where there was no existing hatch, other than that the framing was the same. Overall, this has been a great upgrade to our van. We now get access to the full storage capacity with the touch of a button. All in all, a very worthwhile and rewarding project at very little cost. I will leave a list of materials and tools in the comments. We hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. If anyone needs more detail, please leave a note in the comments. I will be happy to help.